Serious. What is the creepiest, strangest, scariest experience you ever had in your life? Worked emptying an old house. The house was infested with cockroaches. The whole house felt depressing. When we emptied the basement, it always felt like someone was right behind us. There was a cut rope hanging from the ceiling. The woman that lived there had hung herself. We didn't find out till last week of work. We never went down to the basement alone after that. Was checking the cows one morning and was watching the calves play and counting them all when I heard an odd sound in the woods. It sounded like a woman crying, and I walked around. That's when it started screaming at that point, so I said fuck this, walked back to the UTV, and went home. In all reality, I knew it was a mountain lion. I didn't want no part of that crap. Coming back from a New York Giants football game as a 12-year-old, we were driving past a bunch of old abandoned factories when I saw a teenager in rags and what looked like chains around his body limping away from one of the factories like he just escaped from a horror movie torture chamber. By the time I told my friend's dad, we were already past where I saw the kid. Very strange. I knew what I saw that day, and it was something serious. I was in middle school when this occurred, so I was around 12 to 13 years old. My best friend and I were next-door neighbors, so we often walked to and from the bus stop for school. We were walking home one day from the bus stop when an old red pickup truck slowly drove by us. We didn't recognize this red pickup as anyone that lived in the neighborhood. It was a small neighborhood. The truck was going the same way we were walking, and we could see the driver lean forward, and it looked like he was looking at us. He then sped off down at the end of the block and turned around the corner. My best friend and I looked at each other and said, "That was weird." We shrugged it off since there was some houses for sale in the block, and we did happen to walk by one. We were halfway down the block when the same red truck turned from the corner and was heading towards. He was speeding down the road, but as he approached us, he slowed down. The man's driver's side window was now rolled down. I don't remember much of what he looked like, but I do remember him having face tattoos. Now we were worried. As we passed him and he slowly passed us, I happened to look behind me to make sure he was still driving. Nope. His brake lights lit up and his truck jerked when he placed it into park. I saw the driver door open and I yelled to my best friend, "Run!" We proceeded to sprint to my best friend's house since her mom was home and no adult was home at mine. We practically threw open the front door of my best friend's house and slammed the door closed and locked every lock on the door. My best friend's mom was mad at us for slamming the door until we told her what happened. As we were telling her this, the same red pickup truck slowly drove down the street as we watched from the front window. We could see him looking around as he drove slowly. I'm pretty sure to this day he was looking for my best friend and I. This scared her mom enough to call the local police department's non-emergency number. This guy circled the block of my neighborhood twice while she was on the phone with the police department. Police started to patrol the neighborhood, but we didn't see the red pickup truck after the police showed up. I have no idea what happened after that, but we never saw the red pickup truck. We weren't walking to the bus stop for a week after that. My best friend's mom drove us to and from school for the week. My freshman year in high school, I was taking choir class. We were staying after school practicing for our concert later that month, and one day my teacher ended up calling practice about an hour early. We all started calling our parents to let them know we were finishing practice early that day. One of the girls in my class had left her phone at home that day. She asked if she could use anyone's phone to call her mom. Of course, I offered mine and she called her mom. From behind me, where she was sitting, I hear her crying. She asked me what my number was. I was confused, but I recite my number back to her. She still has my phone to her ear and says, "Tell me your number is my aunt's old number? She passed a year ago." When she called her mom with my cell phone, her mom received an incoming call from her sister that had passed. It was the craziest, strangest thing. Not scary or bad, but still something I think about. I was an 18-year-old Canadian female living in Hong Kong by myself to study Cantonese. One of my good friends wanted to show me Macau. It's been called the Chinese Las Vegas. I agreed and we boarded the ferry at around 8 at night. It takes about an hour to get there, so we arrived at about 9. We took off to the casinos and had a great night. On a whim, my friend asked me if I wanted to go to mainland China on another ferry from Macau. I had never been to this particular area of China, so I said sure. Problem? My friend went through the immigration for the last ferry, and I was right behind him. I was denied because I didn't have a visitor's visa for mainland China. My friend was Chinese, so he had no problem. 18-year-old me had no idea this was a thing, as Macau and Hong Kong didn't require them, and they wouldn't let my friend back in. Best part? My phone was dead. I was kicked out back to the streets of Macau with no way to contact my friend and no idea how to get back to Hong Kong. At this time, it was about 1 a.m. I'm walking the streets, looking in convenience stores for phone chargers, panicking, having no idea what to do. As soon as I left a convenience store, a man came up to me and asked me, "How much?" Mind you, I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt with running shoes, but that's beside the point. I told him no and kept walking. He followed me. It's dark. I'm walking down a street. I have no idea where I am, and my phone is dead. I can hear him getting closer behind me. I realize up the street is an alleyway, and I remember thinking, this is going to end badly if I don't do something. Just as I suspected, I get closer to the alleyway and I hear him start running up to me. I turned around and his hand was reaching to grab me and punched him as hard as I could in the face. He didn't fall down, just took a few steps back and held his face. As luck would have it, a taxi was going down the street. I jumped in and just screamed, "Go!" in Cantonese. I finally managed to find my way back home, but oh my gosh, I was so stupid. One night, I was waiting for my now ex-boyfriend to get home from work. He was due any minute. I was sitting on the couch in the living room and had a clear view of the front door. I see the front doorknob start to rattle, and our new puppy started losing her mind. She would get in between your legs and trip you up, so I just took a couple minutes to calm her down, figuring my ex would make it inside before I managed to get her out of my way. But the door doesn't open. I figure my ex is struggling with his tool bag and other work stuff, so after I get the puppy calm, I go and open the front door. No one was there. I thought maybe he went back to his truck, so I shut the door and wait for him. Several minutes pass. I call him and say, "Hey, where'd you go?" He asks what I mean. I ask, "Weren't you just here? You tried to open the door." He said he'd gotten caught up talking to his mom as he'd swung by his parents' house and he was still about 15 minutes out. I was creeped out, but chalked it up to my drunk neighbor trying to get into the wrong apartment again. The next day, I found out another neighbor had opened their door to someone and gotten tied up and robbed at gunpoint. I don't know if it was the same person at my door. I don't know if that would have happened to me, as I had a habit of just opening the door without checking the peephole. I was really naive, but I was really grateful that my puppy kept me from opening the door immediately, and really grateful that my ex had gotten me in the habit of locking the front door when I'm home. A friend and I were riding our bikes in a neighborhood on a lovely, breezy summer day. We found a paved hill, so went down it and came to a run-down house just behind a bunch of other houses. Outside this house, there was a tall, spindly cross. We both swore that the wind stopped blowing entirely and clouds had suddenly filled the sky. Hightailed it out of there after the eerie silence got unbearable. A couple of weeks later, we went back and it was gone. Nothing left but dirt. In retrospect, it was probably nothing at all, and the change in weather could have been due to the trees in that area at the bottom of the hill that stopped the wind, but as young kids, we were spooked. There's a small cave system near my house, and me, my brother, and a friend decided to go explore it one day when I was about 8. The cave starts out beginning quite spacious and is even equipped with light, as it is located in a bit of woods near the town, so lots of people go in it. But we decided to move further than this known part, the ceiling getting closer and closer with each turn. After 20 minutes or so, we come to a point where we have to continue on our knees until eventually we can't progress unless we crawl on our stomachs. No natural light is to be seen anywhere, but we still decide to do it. We crawl for quite some time before I start panicking. There's no way to turn around in this position. There's no way anyone would hear us screaming for help if we got stuck or hit a dead end. No one even knows where we went. Cell phones weren't a thing yet. Luckily, eventually the ceiling got higher, light became visible, and we found an exit, but damn, I was never so scared for my life ever again. Scariest was just before my dad died. Someone broke into our house. I thought my dad was invincible and strong, but that night I learned he wasn't anymore. He hid in the closet of the spare room with us and kept us quiet. I was really young, not quite 7, and I think that was the scariest part for me. In that moment, realizing as a child that my dad's brain cancer was winning. I think my dad only lived another 6 months or so after that. In high school cross country, we did a Christmas event where we'd run to the closest elementary school and hang out with the children there, run with them, dance with them, etc. Just whatever they wanted, really. I'm a nervous wreck and could only talk to one kid at a time, so I hung out with this shy little girl who didn't want to dance or run, so we just talked and drank Gatorade in the back of the room. I don't know what we were talking about, but she told me she didn't like her uncle, and I was like, why? And she said he touched her private parts. I freaked out internally. The teachers called all the children to get into line shortly after that. I told a senior friend of mine what she said, and she told the teachers. I felt fucking awful for forever after the girl told me, like reality had just hit me. I had to text my mom about what happened to vent, and even after that I still didn't feel better. I don't know what happened to that kid, and I hope she never sees her uncle again. I couldn't do the event next year. This probably sounds ridiculous when I wasn't even the victim, but it's how I felt. I even felt sick writing this out. I don't know. My ex and I lived in apartments for years. She would always make enemies and would go out of her way to hurt them. This escalated to hiring a private investigator to dig into a janitor's past and staging a harassment scene to get him fired. Since our bridges were toasty at that place, I figured a house would be better. No one to become enemies with except me. Things got bad fast. Calling me names, screaming at me, throwing things. Weird conversations where she would start talking for me, so I just became a spectator. She switched from Christianity to Wiccan and started drawing pentagrams with her blood outside and insinuating I shouldn't fall asleep because she needed another sacrifice. She would casually talk about killing herself and would remind me if I called the cops she was a small female professional actor and I was a large athletic man. Her threats kept getting more explicit, and I was sleeping in a room by myself, propping chairs under the doorknob just in case, but jumping awake in panic at the smallest creak. Eventually, I realized what an idiot I was and I left. I had nightmares for months of being hunted by a mountain lion, dinosaur, or giant spider and would wake up screaming. My room has a deadbolt on it, and if I'm traveling, I sleep in my own room with a chair under the doorknob. I just really love being able to sleep without worrying about getting stabbed. This one is my brother's experience, not mine, but I am somewhat partly involved with it. A couple decades ago, when I was still in elementary school in my home country, it was just a normal day at school. Came home to my mom's clinic after school with my brother, I'm eldest, my bro is second eldest, and ate an early dinner there. My mom was a dentist at the time. I usually got home with both of them after my mom closes shop every evening, but this particular day, I asked my mom that I will be going home early, so I left my bro and mom behind the clinic. I got home and dusk came and darkness had fallen, and I'm starting to become curious why they have not arrived home yet. After another hour, I'm starting to get worried, wondering if something bad happened. All three of us normally come home before nightfall, and it was just very odd they haven't come home yet. I was scared and worried shitless, having endless thoughts of what could have gone wrong. As a kid in elementary, I couldn't handle the stress and I started crying like crazy. Midnight struck, and they were still missing. Finally, at 2 a.m., I heard a knock on the door, and I quickly rushed to open it. I'm usually scared opening the door this late, but I couldn't care less. I just wanted my brother and mother to be the two humans knocking. I opened the door, and I saw two pale figures. My mom and my brother were soaking wet, barefoot, and were shaking like crazy. I couldn't even fathom what had happened, and we just stared at each other for a good few minutes until I finally broke the silence with what happened. My mother told me the most fucked up story. They rode a passenger bus around evening time after closing shop, and everything was going well until near the end of the trip. While in the bus, they heard a couple of loud thuds just underneath the bus, making the whole vehicle shake a bit. They heard metal scratching through concrete and all. The bus had to stop, and in my country, the roads are very dark with no lighting, so they had to resort to flashlights brought by the bus driver and conductor. The driver was the first one out of the bus with his flashlight to check what could have happened and inspect the underside of the bus. He went back inside the bus with a face that looked like he was about to puke and asked everybody to get off the bus and find another transportation. My brother and mother got off and they peeked under the bus, only to realize there was a mangled body of someone riding a motorcycle underneath the bus. It was dark, but with the help of some flashlights, they could see flesh, brains, blood on concrete, all that meshed with twisted metal underneath the bus. My mother and brother told me the bus hit a motorcycle and it went under the bus, crushing the motorcyclist amidst all the mangled flesh and metal. I could not sleep that night, Neither could either my mom or bro. And the next morning, just as we were trying to heal from what had happened and all the trauma, I was also traumatized just hearing the story from them, especially in the state they were in. My aunt, my mom's sister, broke the news to us later that following day that her husband never came home last night. The mangled body underneath the bus was my uncle's dead body. I still hurt every time I recall this story, and I am shaking as I type and share this with you all. God bless, and please tell everyone in your family you love them, because you never know what tomorrow will be like. I always think about this to this day. 5 to 6 years ago, my husband would wake up way earlier than me, come to my side of the bed and give me a kiss before he left. Every day, just walk around to my side, kiss me, tell me he loved me, and say goodbye. Never missed a day. Then I would go back to sleep for another hour before getting up for work. He always did this in the dark so as not to wake me or turn on the lights. This is so hard to explain, but one day he did this, said goodbye, and I went back to sleep. I heard the door close and closed my eyes. Felt like maybe 10 to 15 minutes passed, and I felt like someone was walking towards the bed. I thought maybe he forgot something, came back and wanted to say goodbye, or maybe he never left and I dreamt that. Felt like a dark shadow form sat on the bed like he normally did, but something didn't feel right. I felt like the shadow wanted me to acknowledge it, but I didn't. It didn't say anything, so I rolled to the other side of the bed and ran into the living room. Turned all the lights on, the doors were locked. My husband had definitely left. It was so early in the AM and still dark. I don't know why it freaked me out, and I never know I was awake. After that, I told him to turn on my lamp when he kissed me goodbye. Never ever leave me in the dark again, to this day. It's hard to explain, and doesn't sound scary when I type it out, but it really freaked me out.